So welcome to the first of a few bonus updates because, if you remember the Ninja Gaiden Black and Sigma LP, you know that I'm doing this video because Sigma 2 decides to fuck up the chapter counts again. So instead of having the 360 game get ahead of the other, we're going to focus on another Ninja Gaiden game that came out in the interim between Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2. And it's a DS title of all things.
I loved this game. Probably had one of the more unique control schemes I've ever seen.
Yes, the game in question being Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword. Like, the word dragon is one that gets thrown a lot in this game, hence, the name of the title, and also this little prologue about, the race of dragons and how the dragon sword came to be made, and the dragon lineage, and I've already said dragon like 3 or 4 times in the course of this single fucking sentence.
Plus, by royal decree of Nintendo, every DS game has to have their subtitles be D and S.
Yes, that's true, although there were some exceptions, I think. I remember there was like a Fire Emblem game that was like a remake of the first one, and like its subtitles, like if you initialized it, it was SD instead of DS, so they got away with it, but only backwards.
Oh, you cheeky Fire Emblem people.
Cheeky intelligent systems bastards. But yeah, this game is... I would definitely put it as my favorite game on the Nintendo DS, just as far as exemplifying everything that was like unique and like kind of stand out to that system in particular. Because I mean, yes, obviously the DS was a touchscreen based platform, so naturally it's going to be used extensively in this in a way that I think is very unique and gives this game certainly far more value than, say, Sigma Plus on the Vita, which is just a downscaled port of Ninja Gaiden Sigma. But already, like, if you can tell just from looking at this is one of the few Nintendo DS games where you are expected to hold it, like, on its side. The screens are oriented vertically, like side by side, instead of the kind of traditional kind of top-bottom screen layout.
Kind of makes you feel like you're holding a book.
Definitely.
Or possibly maybe a manga is what they were going for.
Yeah. A lot of story also in this one, like this is the game that kind of goes out of its way to try and flesh out the Hayabusa village a bit more than it did in the first game, and certainly more than Ninja Gaiden 2 does, by adding a lot more extra characters and just kind of signs the, that this is Ryu's home. But we're not playing as Ryu to start. We're going to be fighting him as Momiji. This little sequence right here actually is kind of scripted in a way that you can't actually land a hit on Ryu. Like, you'll always like get out of the way, but he can hit you, of course. This is meant just to be like you kind of doing training in the wilderness.
Well, you are the trainee and he is the master, so
absolutely.
He's just that good that you can't get a hit on him.
Yep.
Does the game explain the controls, or?
It does. This section, it just kind of throws you in and kind of expects you to flail around, as
Gotcha.
you saw. Little musical Easter egg for people that remember the NES games.
I didn't notice that when I played it.
That I think is like one of those few like references that I think like the modern Ninja Gaiden games can be allowed to make to the classic ones and feel feel like a good fit. Yeah. Like that's a good musical sting to put like at the start of a chapter and like get people excited. So now we go into the first chapter, in which it is very tutorialized and kind of explains on the left side, or the left screen rather, like what your basic controls are. You control this entire game like with the touchscreen. You use the stylus, you point and like drag on the screen to move your character, and that is also what you use to attack enemies. You just swipe over them and just slash them.
Man, I loved this control scheme.
Yeah. Although I do have to preface in the case of this video that I don't have the means to capture DS footage directly, like from the actual hardware. So I had to play this through a DS emulator, and you might be somewhat surprised considering that, you know, playing this with a mouse would in your mind seem just as intuitive, but like the way that certain things are programmed with the touch inputs makes it playing it with a mouse actually a bit more clumsy, and so I'm not at the top of my game going through through this video, as you'll find out. But yeah, like you control like movement, you attack with the stylus. You can like swipe up to jump. You can tap enemies to throw projectiles at them, which is, in the case of playing this on an emulator, it's one of the more difficult aspects of it because it'll initially try and register a movement command first. So while this is primarily a touchscreen based like gameplay system, but as you saw like in the previous tutorial bit, you do still need to use a button, and that button is to block, you know, which is a pretty important feature in the Ninja Gaiden games.
If I'm remembering correctly, when you say a button is to block, it's more like every button is block. Exactly.
Which is pretty useful considering that this game has options to kind of basically let you it basically changes it so that like if you're like right or left-handed, depending on how you want to hold the DS, like you can swap the positions of the screen, and so that kind of helps a lot, like in kind of which buttons you're able to easily press when you're holding it on its side.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, it's a really like simple yet so satisfying game to play in that regard, and I still love in particular like basically I guess the whole impetus like for this game's existence compared to when this was still, because Itagaki was still at Team Ninja when this game was being made, and as you know, he was way into the Xbox to the point of basically making that the place like for their main console games.
Yeah.
But do you want to know the reason why, of all things, he decided to take on making a DS game?
Yes.
The reason is because his daughter specifically requested he make a DS game so that she and her friends could play one of his games.
Oh.
Which is honestly real sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, Japan, like Xbox isn't the big seller there. Like, Itagaki was making DOA and Ninja Gaiden like for that system because he liked the hardware and he knew that, you know, there's more sale opportunity, you know, when you put it on a system that a lot of people in the West are gonna buy. But the DS was huge in Japan, so it could stand to use a game that is, you know, not trying to be exactly like what Ninja Gaiden was, but carry on that spirit with like a kind of a new, fresh take on it. Which is how pretty much like any game that you're going to like make for a handheld should be. It's like the one thing that like the PSP and the Vita consistently messed up on, even though there were some games that adhered to like that sort of philosophy of like not making the exact same experience, but like the hardware in those things and the way they were advertised like clearly led to people trying to make downsized console experiences instead of proper handheld ones.
Yeah, and most of the games that were on the DS were significantly better once they started playing to the DS's Strength or gimmick, depending on, your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, like this, like we're not gonna see it all in this video, but there are like some like moments in the game where they actually make use of the DS's built-in microphone, like kind of one-off gimmick stuff. But like it's used very rarely, and like most of the stuff that you will be making use of is all touchscreen based. And it does, and like that, along with holding the DS on its side so that the screens are oriented vertically, is it totally is not like any other handheld game in a lot of ways, but it does not feel gimmicky in the slightest.
That ultimate technique looked pretty strong.
It does, and like the way it's all set up is with like rapidly like sliding the stylus back and forth, but again, because of this being on an emulator, it's way harder for the whole thing to kind of like process it sometimes. But it does not like produce the same attacks that you're probably used to with ultimate techniques like in the mainline games, because you see it's just sending out shockwaves that just fly all around the arena. But you can still chain them together like always. They produce like larger essence from enemies when they're killed by it.
I remember playing this and being absolutely paranoid. Oh, dragon, cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely paranoid that I was just gonna scratch the absolute hell out of my screen.
I'm pretty sure I scratched the hell out of like my at the time DS screen protector. But anyway, this is like actually the end of the first chapter, and this is a boss that is actually similar to when you fought Doku in Chapter 2 of Ninja Gaiden Sigma, in that it is a boss fight that you're intended to lose, but there is actually a reward if you're able to deplete this boss's health bar. I've not been able to do it, though. Like, I wasn't able to beat Doku, like, that early on in Sigma. I could not beat this dragon with Momiji, like, on the original hardware or this. Like, definitely not on the emulator, because of just the finickiness of registering the inputs.
You got it halfway down.
Yeah, which is ironically like more progress I made on that than I ever did on my actual cart, which I don't know how to feel about that. But now Momiji's been captured by the Black Spider clan, personally escorted out by Obaba, who's the kind of clan witch of the Black Spider, and I would say, not necessarily for this game, but others that were mostly overseen by Hayashi, so basically everything past Ninja Gaiden 2 original is a character that I'd say gets used way more than she should. Like, she should have just stayed in this game and not get reused in other games for no good reason. This little scene I like as far as it being a general recap of like the history of the Dark Dragon Blade, as well as the events of Ninja Gaiden 1, as well, and it gets to reuse the first game's opening music as well.
Wonder how good of swords bones make.
I can't answer that question. But this scene, I think, like, definitely exemplifies like an important thing to keep in mind with Ninja Gaiden Dragon's Sword, is that even like with its unique kind of like controls and like kind of like take on the Ninja Gaiden formula, this is actually a game that reuses a lot of assets and locations from the first Ninja Gaiden. I mean, like, aside from the fact that, like, you're clearly seeing Ryu's Ninja Gaiden 1 outfit and not Ninja Gaiden 2 for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But, like, the Hayabusa village, as you'll see, is, like, a very focal point of the game. But later chapters, if you play it for yourself, you'll recognize that you go to locations that are straight up from the first game. Like, you go to old places that you visited in Vigor that are now, like, totally in ruins because of Ryu's whirlwind tour of revenge.
It's a good way to put it, actually.
Yeah. But now we are back in the village, as always, like, location continuity is pretty key in this series, and this game does a good job of keeping true to the layout and, like, kind of general location of the village. As seen here, we're starting right in the arena where we fought the where we actually first got the bow and arrow in the first game. Like, we're only just like a couple screens away from where we fought Masakado. But as Ryu, one of the things that he has over Momiji is, as you saw, the Izuna drop. And it is the all-powerful, super awesome ender that you would expect it to be.
Swipe down, swipe up, go nuts.
Yeah, swipe down, swipe up, then up again to follow it up, which is actually really useful in that regard. It's still amazing when you think about it, just how, like, you're using the stylus to like swipe over enemies in order to, like, slash at them, and you're able to get different moves based on the direction that you're actually swiping, and the fact that you don't really run into situations much where you get a move that you did not intend to. Like, the Izuna drop technique, the way it's performed here is super, like, it's very distinct.
Yeah.
I accidentally, like, tapped on the kid when I didn't mean to a second time, but yes, this game introduces various characters, including the village children being, like, a kind of core part of it. Hanamaru being a kind of portly fellow, not necessarily, like, cut out to be a ninja quite yet. But at least, like, this game proves that, yes, there are still people that are willing to live and fight in the village, and they weren't all just totally killed in the first game.
Man, that would have been a huge downer ending. You got your sword back. Everyone's dead.
Yep.
With all the little combat rooms that they give you, they did a damn good job of making the combat fun, because I don't, like, remember the plot of the game or anything, but I definitely remember that it never really got, like, boring. I never really got tired of fighting stuff like in some other games.
Same, yeah. And there's the second kid, Denroku, who's basically, like, the bookworm of the village. Like, if you go up to him, like, later on in the game, he'll basically give you gameplay tips and always kind of preface it as, well, at least that's what this book tells me it's supposed to do, when he's describing stuff like essence absorption and ultimate techniques and other shit. But hey, at least, you know, for a hidden ninja village, at least it's a good thing that Muramasa is easily welcomed in there.
True.
He's always got important things to give us.
Yeah, he's not, like, a specific member of the village.
No, he's just a merchant that's on very good terms with them. And in order to continue to show us this goodwill, he gives us our first Nimpo. And this is another aspect of the game that uses the touchscreen that I love a whole lot. You activate Nimpo, and you draw the symbols, and go fucking nuts. You control the fireball with the stylus, which makes this, I think, compared to the other like incarnations of Art of Inferno, makes this version way more powerful, because it's more direct control over that orb as opposed to just firing it in one direction and letting it go crazy on whatever is in its way.
That is an absolute thing of beauty.
Yep. Thankfully, though, the save statues will, like, replenish your Nimpo, like, if you're empty, as well as your health, which is, like, another thing that is interesting to realize when you, like, go through Dragon Sword, is that there are concepts in this game that actually, like, they're like stuff that gets carried over into Ninja Gaiden 2. Like, stuff with Ryu's general movement is actually a bit faster. I mean, he does still have to dodge roll and things like that, but I can't speak. The save statues, as you saw, they do what they do in Ninja Gaiden 2, in that they'll refill your health, like when you go up to them. Although in that game, it's obviously more balanced due to the difficulty that it only does it the first time.
Backgrounds are reminding me of very, very large amount of like the old Resident Evil style things.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna guess it's like it's pretty obviously like pre-rendered stuff, and then just like various planes that you can walk around on. But I don't know. It's a little nice to see that style used again.
Yeah, it's a very good like thing to use if you really want to put all of your graphics budget on the character models. You know, it's it helps stuff like, you know, especially on the PlayStation 1 with the old Resident Evils and even Square games, that their character models, you know, excluding FF7 with its Popeye arm shit, it's like, you know, they're the better looking games of that generation, and by that same token, this game is one of the better looking DS games because of that. The only times you don't really go into pre-rendered environments are when you're in boss battles, just because of the way the fights are set up. They want to make sure that the boss is always in focus, so they put you into a proper 3D arena, which still looks damn good. I mean, you even saw it with the fire dragon fight with Momiji in chapter 1. And we got more exposition here, basically kind of describing to us again stuff we already know from the first game with the Eye of the Dragon, and how that's the jewel that enhances the Dragon Sword's power even further. But the reason for this is that this little exposition dump is triggered because we discovered like a little message, you know, special orders given from the Black Spider clan that they want the Eye of the Dragon for themselves.
Of course they do.
Yeah. Which is why they went after Momiji, because she's supposed to be like the next Shrine Maiden, who's also somewhat proficient with a sword, because Ryu had the absolutely genius idea in the entire series that a Shrine Maiden should be able to protect herself, so that something like what happened in the Dark Dragon Blade incident would not happen again.
These Shrine Maidens just kind of seem to get, you know, kind of stabbed a lot. Maybe we should do something about that.
Yeah. There's the third village kid, obviously being a girl. The other two like major NPCs that you saw like as we were coming up here were, as you first saw, the old man was Genshiro, who's, you know, like basically like his backstory is that he's like an old like war buddy of Joe Hayabusa. You know, like he basically fought alongside him. They kicked ass together. And then one of the other major NPCs you saw, like even earlier on, was a woman named Omitsu, who's basically like the caretaker of the village children, but also is not like a slouch when it comes to fighting, particularly in long range. Like her reputation in the village is that like she's an expert marksman. And now we're going through, you know, like parts of the village that you might remember from Chapter 2 of Ninja Gaiden 2, because we went up this exact same path in order to get to the castle where Joe was fighting Genshin.
And it actually took me a minute to remember who Genshin was.
Yeah,
he showed up like that one time, and that was it so far. Well, maybe I'll come back more.
Oh, he will be back more in Ninja Gaiden 2. Like I said, he's the rival character of that game. But this is nice, like, in the context of when this game first came out. It was like an early, like, 2008 release, like, just months before Ninja Gaiden 2 actually came out. So on top of this, taking, like, environments and assets from Ninja Gaiden 1 and kind of, like, reinterpreting them, like, through this new control scheme and experience, they also included stuff in the game that were, like, direct sneak peeks of what Ninja Gaiden 2 was going to have. Like, this part of the village, and there's even Like, no joke. There's even a boss later in the game that is actually just it's basically the blueprint for the Resetsu boss fight. You know, the giant man spider that you fought at the end of the first chapter in Ninja Gaiden 2. It's like got the same moves and proportions and everything.
And even on a tiny screen, that's still so satisfying.
It really is. Now it's Ryu's turn to fight the dragon.
Where has the dragon taken Momiji?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess they basically just like dumped Momiji's body on its back and basically told it to fly somewhere.
Dragon, do something with this.
Yeah. It's a goddamn pack animal is what it is. Oh, so here's another thing that you use like the touchscreen for. If you get like caught into like those command grabs that bosses just love to do in the regular games, you just like quickly move the stylus back and forth and you will like get out of it faster.
That's kind of nice. They're rewarding you for, you know, probably something you might be doing anyway.
Yeah, it's basically the equivalent of mashing the buttons to get out of a grab. It functions pretty much the same. Only thing that can possibly be tricky in this game if you're not prepared for it, there's no healing items. Like, thankfully it still has like the regenerating health system that Ninja Gaiden 2 has, but you're not going to get any elixirs or grains to kind of refill any of like that permanently missing health, which is basically why the dragon statues refill your health every time you visit them anyway. There's like a lot more that could be covered, but I just wanted to like show off these first 2 chapters anyway, just because they give a good overview of how the game controls anyway. It's amazing. It's worth getting if you still have a means to play DS games. Seriously, it's the best game for that system. Good job, Team Ninja.
Yeah, it's easily. I'll toss a recommendation in for that too. It's easily the only game that makes use of the touchscreen gimmick in a way that actually feels good. It doesn't feel like it's shoehorned in or anything like that, and it's easily the most unique control scheme I've ever seen.